Hello, this is Vivica Williams, and you're watching Head to Head. The opening of the land market remains one of the priority reforms in Ukraine. The abolition of the moratorium on land sale is important in terms of attracting private investment and in issuing loans to the government. To discuss the pros and cons of this process, we welcome to the studio today Oleksandr Shkurla, a specialist on business environment and land reform. Thank you very much for being with us today, Oleksandr.
Thank you very much for inviting, and good evening.
Good evening. And this has been a big topic that it has been continuously brought up, and not much progress has been made on it. So can you give us an idea of what's been happening in the last few months?
Okay, really this moratorium lasts for quite a long time in Ukraine. It's around 17 years already. At the beginning, it has been decided by the parliament to have some preliminary character, but unfortunately, the time really has passed many years, and I think that at the moment the society it's more and more ready for the final decision. Because and also slowly the opinion is changing also in the parliament, and the government it's ready to do it, but unfortunately government doesn't have power to implement such a reform without the consent of parliament, and so that means the power of decision is on the parliament, and the situation in parliament is more complicated because there are many forces that are afraid of taking this decision. But the decision opening land market it's very important, and the Ministry of Agrarian Policy and Food is doing some preparatory steps. That means fulfilling of land cadaster with parcels, also preparing other important information like normative monetary evaluation of land, and also there is also very important steps that has been done at the beginning of this year when the Cabinet of Ministers adopted decree that transfers the state-owned land into communal ownership for so-called unified territorial units. It's
so let's talk about some of these, because these are a lot of good points. First, let's talk a bit about the reason for the moratorium. Now, I believe at the time it was a good idea, this trying to prevent this run on selling land, and what we saw with the fall of the Soviet Union, just this very fast giving people a few dollars for property. So was this the idea behind the moratorium initially, was to try to first assess and be able to prevent just this massive wholesale of land?
Yeah, exactly. It was something like you said. It was previously like the first reason, previous. But at the moment, really situation it's like this, that this asset is the biggest asset of Ukraine. It's really frozen for many years, and it's according to our opinion as experts of Saxo Group. We really are persuaded that it needs to be abolished, this moratorium, as soon as possible, because every year the Ukraine is losing not only investments but also proper attitude to how the land should be cultivated, because if you are cultivating land that doesn't belong to you, it's not the right way of cultivating it, and also some characteristics of fertility. It's deteriorating, unfortunately, of Ukrainian land.
Because we see that sometimes when it's not your land, the issue being that it's less competitive and people take less care of getting the most yields from land, using better better harvesting or growing practices. Is this some of the concerns about why having this land moratorium is detrimental to the farming and agrarian industry?
Okay, so for some agrarian enterprises, it's advantageous to have a moratorium in place because they are using quite cheap lease fees for renting such land, especially from private owners.
So this helps. This is useful to companies, to large organizations, to be able to get this low lease from land.
Yes, for them they are useful to stay to keep the status quo, but there is society's interest, which should be higher than the interest of some few private agro holdings. Most important is that there is breach of private property principle, because if there is 7 million people are owners but are curbed on using this right fully, so this is a problem. And
what do you mean by they're curbed? So they can't sell their land. They
cannot sell it. This first point. The second point, they cannot take the credits and giving collateral of this land that they are owners, because the banks are not allowed to issue credits with such a guarantee.
So if they were able to take out credits, these small landowners, they could use the credit to purchase better equipment, to invest more into their land. So not being able to own the land gives people a feeling of less empowerment and less desire to really invest in better cultivation practices.
Yes, of course, yeah, exactly. So you are absolutely right, because to transfer the state land among 7 million people and not giving them the real instruments to either cultivate or to create market on it where the lease rents will be competitive. So it is not the full transformation. So it's necessary that the state of Ukraine will continue this transformation and finish it with aim to give the full full ownership rights to the owners. And unfortunately, almost 1.5 million of people have already died since the times that this reform was implemented. Nevertheless,
this complicates then the tracking of ownership, or
no. It's yes. There's in cases when there are no daughters or sons or children, and there could be problem because this land has to then be transferred into communal ownership. But in other cases, there are children of these
people who inherited
that could settle these ownership rights. But I'm saying just of the principle of justice. So if
for these 1.5,
for this 1.5 and the 7 million people which are being they are not having this full ownership rights. And there was also recently a decision of European Court on Human Rights that confirmed as a breach of human rights in this case.
So not being able to have ownership, this freedom of use of your property is a breach of human rights.
Yes.
And now one of the major obstacles to being able to end the land moratorium was establishing who owns the land, ownership rights. And part of this was through a registry, getting the facts, the deeds, all of the information. So how far has the registry progressed at this point? And what, if any, are the holdups?
So with regards private lands, the registry, it's quite fulfillment of the land, state land register, it's quite at the high level, up to 95%. The worst situation is with the state-owned land parcels, And I think that the work is going on in this direction. Recently, there was one of draft law adopted in first reading in the Ukraine Parliament, 8121, that proposes to give compulsory task to the cabinet of ministers to finish this process of fulfillment of land cadastre as soon as possible.
And also with the land, so this was a big thing. This is the finishing up the registry, and the main holdup is with the government fulfilling their end of it. Do you think that the IMF putting this expectation that land reform will be completed, will this give a big push, an impetus for the government to really push through completing this process?
We would hope that IMF would also be on the side to support such reform, but I cannot speak instead of IMF, so it's up to them to decide. But the main point is that postponing of this cancellation of moratorium, it's making the losses of the Ukrainian economy, not the economy or not the interests of IMF. So this
should be a very important personal issue for not just the government.
Yeah, the government and the people and inhabitants of Ukraine should realize that. I just could mention the figure that is given by the Minister of Agrarian Policy. Only when comparing the level of harvests in Ukraine and in other countries, that Ukraine is losing 3.3 billion American dollars every year on this difference, that harvests are much less as they could be. Right. So it's only the one figure, and we are not going into details what regards potential investments, what regards
all of the other aspects
of improving the attitude to cultivation, going to niche products which have a bigger added value.
Yes. And especially with the European market, the organics, the very specific type of products. That
exactly. So another figure. So in Ukraine there are something more than 400 operators of organic production, and in France it's around 55,000.
Right. And Ukraine has this major opportunity to overtake this to the disagreement.
Yes. It will happen. I'm sure it will happen sooner or later. But our interest is to speed this process, right, because it's quite slow, and Ukraine needs support, especially in these times when the economy is changing. But I'm sure that in the future Ukraine will prove that it is really agriculture superpower, not only with regards Europe but the whole world.
And so what are the major objections, just as the last question, what are the major objections to this in the holdup? And you're saying it seems to be something that's inside Parliament.
Yes, exactly. So the biggest objection is the resistance from some, I guess, from some agrarian groups that have influence on the parliament, and they are not willing to support this law, and they are postponing. They are what is the positive that even these groups have already changed its presentation, and they speak out a little bit differently today, because they do not speak that they are against. They are speaking that they are for it, but with some postponement. So it is already some positive step.
Some softening of their stances.
Yes, softening is because they feel that the whole situation and perception of this problem in the society is changing towards the support of taking this important decision. So they are not openly against it, but they are not really making real steps to support this important step. But I'm sure that in the future it should happen. We will see how soon it will take time.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and we definitely will have you back on to discuss more when there's some more developments in this. And hopefully it will be this year that we do see some major developments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Oleksandr.
Thank you. Yeah, bye-bye.
And that was Oleksandr Shkurla, a specialist on business environment and land reform. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned with UATV.